Okay. Right, well, pnawn da pawb, diolch am ymuno ni heddiw. Welcome to the Allotment Forum on Tuesday, the 18th of December, 2024. Today, we're going to be talking about a good group. That's about governance, policies, roles, responsibilities, conflict and cooperation. So I hope you're all in the right space. Just to give you a little bit of background, today is actually the second forum for this year. We restarted the forum, we as in Social Farms and Gardens restarted the forum just before the summer when the topic was allotments and the law. That is available on our YouTube channel. And our intention is to host Allotments Forum once a quarter. Just so folk are kind of in the loop, the Social Farms and Gardens team that are online today, we're all based in Wales, and a few of us are funded directly by the Welsh Government, but everyone's welcome wherever you're from. And please do introduce yourselves in the chat feature, that'd be smashing. So my name is Katie, and I work part-time for the Community Land Advisory Service, which is CLAS, the CLAS team. Also in the space today is Lucy, who's the manager for CLAS, and we've got Lisa, who is involved in numerous projects run, thank you for your wave, Lisa, run by Social Farms and Gardens. Lisa will be sharing her experience of running an allotment site in her community. And then we've got various other colleagues as well, who will maybe introduce themselves as and when. Lucy, would you just like to say something about CLAS and our role?
Yeah, so the Community Land Advisory Service has been around in Wales since 2013. But in 2018, Welsh Government said that they'd be interested in funding us because it was complementary to the Green Flag scheme for green spaces. So we are around to help communities access land and get all their necessary permissions, like leases, licenses, and planning. My background's in town planning. And yeah, we do quite a lot of work on a day-to-day basis, helping groups with all those sorts of queries. So if that rings any bells with you and you're interested in working out how to sort of get a lease or a license, or wondering if you need planning permission for certain things, then the Community Land Advisory Service are here to help you.
Great. Lucy, thank you. Yeah, there is a link, Lucy, if you want to share that about if people want CLAS advice, but we can share that after the event if it's not going to be in the chat. So guys, the way we thought it could work today is for us to provide a little bit of background to running a good group, and then lots of questions, opportunities, but also to really invite you to share your knowledge and experience. So, you know, we've all got experiences to share, and we really do genuinely welcome input from others. If you have any questions, you could put them in the chat, but of course, if you'd like to ask a question, you could just raise your hand or wave if you've got your camera on. So I believe in the space today, we've got people who are individual plot holders, people who represent a community group or an association, and those that are elected town or community councillors. So as I've mentioned, today is about a good group, and that was one of the topics which was very popular previously when we asked for ideas. Of course, we all know that allotments are a huge topic, and that there's lots of areas to discuss. So moving on, Lucy, if you could share in the link in the chat, which is the link to the online form about future topics. If you've already filled it in, you don't need to do it again. If you haven't filled it in, that would be really useful, because then we know what to kind of shape in the future. So the spirit of today's forum is informal. I haven't prepared a presentation, so we're going to chat and share links to the existing resources. And to begin with, for this session, I'm going to talk about sort of the ideal scenarios, and then we can talk about the realities, if that works for everybody. So I'm going to just sort of begin by saying that, cooperation is important to the success of any community project, be that allotments, community orchards, community gardens, and so on. And it means that, having a group of people who understand their roles and are motivated to fulfill them. And it involves adopting ways of working which allows space for disagreement and resolution. And I would say that, a good group is when people feel rewarded and appreciated, and that there are clear roles and responsibilities and procedures in place. So running a good group isn't necessarily that easy nor straightforward, because, when people come together and are passionate about a subject, confrontations can occur. And we'll explore how this can be handled later. That's okay. So I would begin by saying that, having a clear vision is important and helpful. It means that people understand what the overall motivation of the group is, and that there are like two elements to group activity. And the first is about content and the second is about process. And what I mean by that is that content refers to what's actually being discussed in meetings, the agenda, and the conversations that are taking place. And process refers to what's kind of happening underneath, the thoughts, the body language, and the feelings of those present. So both of those activities have a bearing on the success of a group. And I would also say that successful groups always allow enough time for people to express thoughts and feelings about their involvement. Okay. I'm now just going to talk very briefly about governance and how important it is. So governance is a big topic, and I'm going to sort of summarize definitions, and then there'll be some signposting going on in the chat. And so, this is about formalizing if you're sort of still in the process of formalizing the group, then sort of this sort of summary is for you. It will be great later on to sort of hear what stage of formality you are involved with your group. So just to kind of confirm, like, governance is about the structures and the processes and procedures that you need to run a community-led land-based project. Well, it's a bit of a tongue twister, isn't it? A community-led land-based project. And a legal structure combines two aspects of an organization. So you've got the legal form of an organization, which is the type of body it is in the eyes of the law. So, for example, that could be a company limited by guarantee, it could be an association, it could be a trust, it could be a community interest company, and so on. There are others that I haven't mentioned. And the second aspect is its governing document, and that's the written statement that sets out how the organization must operate. So that would be a constitution, and or rules or articles. So yeah, so an organization's legal form will come under one of two categories. So you might, so some of you might already know this, some of you might not. So your legal form could be incorporated or it could be unincorporated. And there are benefits and disadvantages of various types of, groups, incorporated or unincorporated. And you'll need to decide which legal form to adopt. And then this is a whole, more knowledge that we haven't got sort of time to share today in this space. But I'm hoping that Lucy will be able to share some of the links for you, and we'll also follow up with links about where to get more advice about legal forms to adopt. And also you can ask us later, of course. So I'm now going to talk about defining roles and responsibilities and making sure they function. So the essential roles in any committee structure are those of the chairperson, secretary, and treasurer, and these are normally referred to as officers on the committee. And at this point, you don't have to hear me talking anymore. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Lisa, who is going to explain some of those roles that she's been involved with and working with her allotment. So Lisa, is this a good time to
Yes,
take the mic?
certainly. Thanks. Thanks,
Marvelous.
Katie.
Okay.
So I'm just going to give a brief background as to what the allotment site was being run like before I took over. And we're talking about an allotment site in my village that I've had a plot on for about 14 years now. So I took this plot on, and it was being run by basically one person on his own who was well into his 80s at the time. He's now about 93. And he'd been running the whole thing as a single person. So everything was on a need to know basis. So I just wanted to say this is where we started from, and then I'll go on to how we've changed that since I got involved. So yeah, a lovely guy had been running everything. Everything was on paper. Nothing was kept electronically. He handed over files and files and boxes of things that he kept over the years. He ran the waiting list in a bit of an eccentric way, so nobody knew who was on the list. Nobody was offered a place unless they chased him up, which didn't work particularly well. There was also a slight bit of sexism going on in that he was very reluctant to give plots to ladies who didn't have a husband to pick them up. So that was a very traditional view of his. And we had problems with water. We didn't have any communal water collection on site. Everyone just had their individual barrels. We were paying out more every year than the income we were bringing in. So our bank account was diminishing, and there was various things that weren't working particularly well. Nobody was really following up on people who weren't maintaining their plots. People were allowed to keep their plots going for quite often several years before they were eventually asked to vacate. The excuse being there's nobody on the waiting list when it turns out there were actually about 15 people on the waiting list, but they were mostly women who hadn't chased up. So nothing was working as it should have done. I'm not going to tell you which site it is because, yeah, you might go back and say, oh, that site's not been run very well. Let's report them to the council. But it's all changed now. So I was asked to get involved the year before last because the chair who was trying to run everything on his own was finding it a bit much. He'd been doing the job for about 32 years and wanted to hand it on. He was very protective over everything and wanted to keep everything to himself. And it was a real struggle for him to let that go on to somebody else. So he asked me continually for about 8 months, and I kept saying no because I knew if I came in, I'd want to change everything, and people would become upset. Some people wouldn't like it because a lot of people don't like change, and I knew because of my job and because of my previous background, because I'd started a community garden in my village, that I had all the experience, and he knew that as well, which is why he was so keen to hand it on. So eventually I agreed, and I started gradually kind of changing things. And one of the first things I did was try and bring the committee together, organise a meeting, see who was on the committee, see how a committee meeting worked. And they were actually quite slow and painful with a lot of chat going off in different directions, people not really deciding anything, not really much new happening at all. It was just ticking over. So I asked for a couple of new committee members. So we lost a few of the older committee members that didn't really want to be involved anymore, weren't really doing anything anyway. And there was a general feeling of nobody really wanted to be on the committee because this one chap was doing it on his own and nobody else, he didn't need any help, so why get involved? So we started off with quite a few new committee members, and we decided to split the main role into sub roles. So this chap was chair, treasurer, secretary, plot allocation, everything. So I'm just going to run through the different roles that we've established in the meantime. I have done a really detailed list under each role to say what the exact tasks and responsibilities are for that role, but there's probably not going to be enough time to go through the whole lot today. So I'm just going to summarize it a bit, but we can send this out afterwards if you want a more detailed explanation of exactly who does what. So our site is owned by the local authority. We pay a rent every year. We are a statutory site, but we're self-managed. The council don't get involved as long as we pay our rent every year and don't do anything major on site or, build big structures or anything like that. They pretty much just leave us to it. So we're set up as we're called an allotment association. We're unincorporated, but we do have a constitution as our governing document. We are supposed to have had one since we established the site, or since the site was established about 100 years ago, but nobody knew where it was. Nobody had a copy, or even if it existed. So we only put one together kind of last year sometime, and that's all agreed and signed. That's all been sorted now. And we do have a bank account as well. So the various roles that we have the chairperson, and his main thing is he has ultimate responsibility for everything. He's the main contact for inquiries and if the council need to get hold of us for anything. He arranges the meetings, keeping a note of when they need to happen. He runs the AGM, publicises them, makes any important announcements, and he kind of instigates any changes to rules or fees or anything like that. But everything, all decisions are made jointly. No one person on the committee makes a sole decision. It's all put out to see what the committee members think. And he also kind of just makes sure that all the other roles have been fulfilled. The treasurer, up until recently, apart from the chair, I was doing all of the other tasks. And I've had to now divide that role into subtasks. So I'm kind of farming out everything. And this is what kind of instigated this. I started putting together what the treasurer duties were, realised there were quite a lot of them because I was handing them over to somebody else who was new onto the committee. So that's basically anything to do with money. So managing the bank account, setting up the online banking, making sure there's signatories on the checks, making sure our insurance and our council rent is paid every year, managing the petty cash, and just keeping all of the financial records in order to present at the AGM every year. The plot coordinator or the secretary, I'll go on to that one next. So basically records all the meetings at the minutes, make sure they're all approved and circulated, displayed or sent around to anybody that wants to see them. Just keeps an eye on the notice boards, making sure that any information that we've got on site up on display is accurate and it's up to date, making sure the insurance details are accurate and anything else that kind of comes up in between, risk assessment, amendments to the rules, etc. So we've got those three essential roles that Katie mentioned, but we've also got another couple of roles in there just to kind of divide the tasks up a little bit more because it can be quite a lot for people. So we've got a plot coordinator. So their whole purpose is to manage the plots on site in terms of making sure they're all allocated, making sure they're being well maintained, sending out reminders to people who aren't keeping their plot up to standard. And we've become a lot tighter on this now since I took over year before last because we don't want plots sitting there overgrown, not being used properly when we do have people on the list. They also manage the waiting list, make sure it's managed properly and it's up to date, and instigating our formal vacation process, which we are struggling to finalise, to be honest, because it's not a straightforward thing to come up with a process that decides whether or not somebody should be given an informal reminder, a formal request to get their plot tidy, or whether they should just be asked to vacate. So the plot coordinator kind of oversees that whole area. And we have a schools coordinator. We have a primary school next door, and we've got one of our plots is allocated as a wildlife plot for the school. So one of our former committee members has taken on responsibility for that. So he's DBS checked, paid for by the school. He goes into the school to deliver activities around nature, gardening and growing. And he also accompanies a school group over to the site once or twice a week as well. So he just makes sure that they all know what they're doing, they're all safe and supervised, and he helps them grow things, make things on site, etc. And the other role that we are going to set up that we've not yet asked people to express an interest in is as a like a social/community coordinator. So we've not really engaged a lot with our local community because it was a very enclosed site, and that's the way a lot of people liked it, because they were worried that if we allowed the general public onto site, they would be coming in, they'd see what we have. We'd have problems with people taking tools, vandalism, theft, people coming in and just generally causing problems. So there's quite a few people still on site that are not that keen on the social thing. But our new chair is very keen on that. So he's talked about arranging social activities, going across the bowls club and having a game of bowling, going to visit other allotments or community gardens, holding a summer barbecue, maybe raising a bit of income just to supplement the income we have coming in already, which is now looking a lot healthier. And then looking for opportunities to connect with the community as well. So that's a role that we're going to start asking people if they would be interested in taking on, probably early next year now. So yeah, there's lots of little subtasks under that. So we're finding it's working a lot better now. Everyone knows what they're doing, all the responsibilities are shared, and everyone seems happy. We haven't, luckily, had any conflicts on the committee. We've had one or two instances in the past that are between plot holders. Yeah, generally it's all working quite well at the moment. So I can see a question from Nick. So at the moment, our sources of income are basically from plot fees and from funds. So our plot fees stayed the same for many years. As soon as I took over, realised we weren't in a great position with our bank account. I did put the fees up by about 20%, but they're still quite low anyway. So everyone was happy with that. And the other thing we did, which has meant an increase in our income, is we split larger plots. So as people were leaving full size or half size plots, we split those down. So we now have a range of sizes going from a starter plot, which is about 30 square meters, right up into a full plot. So we don't allocate full plots anymore. So we're not charging proportionately. So we've still got to include the National Allotment Society membership. So because we now have more physical plots on site, we have more plot fees coming in, which has bumped our income up. And yeah, we do have the odd bit of funding. We've secured probably about £1,000 from our local community council over the last couple of years. Other than that, we haven't at the moment got any other forms of funding, but hopefully that will change now with the social activities and the little bit of fundraising we want to do from next year. But we're okay. We're not anywhere near bankrupt at the moment.
That's great, Lisa. Does anyone have any questions so far about governance or about roles and responsibilities, or have anything that you would like to share in terms of roles that you found in your committee that are useful? Has anyone got anything that you want to share at this point? Everyone must be eating their lunch. Very quiet. I'm going to move on then. Have I missed anything in the chat though? Actually, is anyone, Lucy, is there anything in the chat that I need to know or shout with you?
No, I think there was just a question about income. That's all I can see.
Yes, the question about
Nick,
I will ask one more question. You mentioned about checks. Do you still use checks for payments?
Ah, right. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. You probably are aware, most of you, if not all of you, that banks, depends what bank you're with, but our bank is Lloyds, and they have recently decided that they're renaming our account from a treasurer's account to a community account, and they're now going to charge for transactions that are physical, like cash or checks. So you can have the first 100 electronic transactions, I think, without any charge. But every time you write a check or pay one in or pay in cash, there is a small charge for that. So one of our new treasurer's duties was to encourage everybody not to be paying cash, set up the online banking, which is a whole task in itself with Lloyds, and to encourage people to pay by bank transfer. So we can go electronic and avoid those charges. Otherwise, collect all the cash and pay in as one transaction, so you're only getting the one transaction fee. But yeah, the only time we pay checks at the moment is for our insurance and for our rent. But we are hoping once the online banking gets set up, we're going to be able, we've requested a debit card as well. So
Yeah.
that will reduce the need for checks. But we have still got them at the moment.
A lot of constitutions say that checks need to be signed by 2 officers, but obviously that can't apply in the world of debit cards and online transfers. So it's just I don't. Do you just let one person do it, do you, basically? Or you
So
will do
with
it?
checks, we've got 3 signatories on the account, and at least 2 of those people have to sign a check for that to work. With the online banking, if we're going to transfer any money to another account, I believe there's a system where you've got to specify that 2 people have to authorize that transfer. But
Right.
without having fully set it up, I think that's how it's going to work. With a debit card, yeah, you're right. There's only one person in charge of that, and we have to trust them. But our treasurer's a primary school teacher who's managed PTA accounts and things like that before.
Yeah,
So, yeah, you just got to choose the right person, I guess.
the change, isn't it? A change in the way finances work for societies in general.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any experience with running bank accounts for community organisations in this space? Sarah, do you have any involvement?
Yeah, and we similarly found it a complete nightmare to try and get the online banking set up. And so we've got an account, our allotment site's got an account with NatWest. And as some people moved off the committee, we tried to put new people on and get everybody registered for online banking. It just took months, and every time we did something, we'd think we'd done it, and then we'd get an email saying that we needed to do some more things, which we'd already done, and you couldn't go into the branch and sort it out. You'd go in and they'd just give you an email address for somebody else that's not there. So it is difficult these days, setting those things up for a community account. But so my only advice would be, don't think it's you. Just sort of plug on, just keep doing it. Eventually they'll sort it out, but it will be tricky and take time.
Second that with NatWest, we've done that on our village hall account. It took us months to get the right debit cards, but we did get there in the end.
Yes,
We did get there in the end.
yes. Nick, you should get in touch with me and or Katie about setting up some allotments in Llangoed because we're
Yeah,
quite local and we'd be happy to help with that.
yeah, sure.
I've just seen that Robin's shared in the chat. He's a community councillor, and he said that he and one other need to authorise online payments online. Robin, what bank are you with?
We are with Barclays.
Okay.
Not more than that, I can't really say because
Yeah.
our council clerk set the whole process up.
Yeah. Okay. There are various other banks that offer community bank accounts, and it depends on what type of governance you operate under. And yeah, how you think you'll be using your bank accounts. I'm involved with a community interest company, and we're with the co-op. I know a lot of people have had real headaches with the co-op. For us, it was really straightforward. I don't know why, but yeah, we're a community interest company, so then that's obviously a different form of governance. I don't think the co-op will use will allow associations. I don't think that's in their kind of rules, etc. But we do have a list of kind of organisations that can provide bank accounts, which I will dig out as well.
And Darren's said about they use the cooperative community woodland.
Okay.
And they found that our online transactions fairly easy set up. And he does all the transactions on his app. Do you want to expand on any of that, Darren?
Yeah, of course. But the Woodlands are community benefit society, so I think it might come down to the governance issue there. That obviously was one that was okay. But yeah, checks are still a real nightmare because we haven't got a physical branch. So we just state on everything for online transactions, and that's really easy for us to deal with. Yeah.
Can I just ask, Darren, did you set that up as like a personal account, or is it a community account with other signatories, or is it just an individual thing that you've done for you?
Oh, so it's the minimum of two signatories on there, so it's a community account. But on our app, it's under business account, but that's just the app because it's not personal. Yeah.
Actually, just to say, often banks, although if you can find a community bank account, it's often managed by the business department within a bank. So just to mention that, so you're not seen as like a private individual, you still kind of come under business, but obviously, you might not be a business, you'll be a community not-for-profit in whatever way, or association, or etc. etc. I'm going to just talk a little bit about conflict, because that was in the title of our topic today. And I don't know, Lisa's mentioned some examples of how conflict might arise. But it can, conflict can arise for many reasons. Just to say that Cooperatives UK have produced a set of booklets called From Conflict to Cooperation, which is available on their website. And that I've got it right to hand. So I'll quickly throw that in the chat as well right now, which I've just managed to do there. And I guess the thing about conflict is that, conflict can often be sidestepped if you do have robust policies and procedures, as well as effective meetings. And so this kind of just takes one back to the kind of the ideal scenario of having an organisation that is sort of structured with, clearly defined roles and responsibilities. And Lisa has already mentioned, examples of, where conflicts might arise. So, a plot holder on an allotment isn't cultivating their plot, or perhaps they're, dumping rubbish or causing a nuisance to other plot holders. And if you already have, in your tenancy agreement, a non-cultivation policy, you can then refer back to it in an official letter from the committee in order to kind of reclaim the plot, if they don't comply within a given time frame. And this really helps, prevents the situation becoming personal, as it could be on sites that aren't well managed. And Lisa also described the situation where you have got one person sort of with all the roles and responsibilities, they're going to be quite dominant within the kind of the organization or the group, and the way around it is to have defined roles within your committee, and which you change regularly, you change yearly or every 2 years. So this really helps kind of disseminate the kind of responsibility and the what's the word I'm looking for? Shares the responsibility. And also remember that the chair of the group doesn't have to chair every meeting. You can still have a rotating chair, so making sure everyone gets a turn. And other members should support the chair in running the meetings. And also, as Lisa sort of mentioned, if meetings drag on for hours and hours and nothing gets done, members are just going to get frustrated and not keep returning. So, have an agenda for the meeting and limit the time spent on each item, and try and keep the chatting and the socializing essential after business has been dealt with. I mean, these are some are kind of, quite, when you see it and you think, oh yeah, that's really obvious, but sometimes if the groups evolve very organically, systems and processes aren't sort of put in place. I think the thing that's probably quite tricky to to navigate is, you know, when there's a serious personality clash between members, and you know, this can be really difficult to manage because emotions are running high. And this is probably something that, you know, if it's really, really difficult, this is when maybe, and you know, a group might consider asking an impartial facilitator or mediator to help resolve the conflict. So I guess from our side, from social farms and gardens kind of perspective, I guess, you know, with our experience, I suppose that, you know, for any community groups to flourish, its members need to enjoy being involved. And there's always going to be occasion where disagreements happen or problems arise. But ultimately, you know, the aim is that groups should be able to maintain an ethos of open communication and mutual respect, and avoid becoming over-reliant on one or two people. And, you know, most people really enjoy given the opportunity to help out, you know, encourage members of the community to be involved and find out what their skills and passions are. And ultimately, you know, people feel included in decisions and are given a chance to contribute their skills, then, you know, then that really builds sort of resilience. And, you know, hopefully the community group will be, you know, a vibrant one. And there is a kind of, you know, there's sort of a known phenomena, which is when, you know, groups flourish and then there's a dip, and that's a very natural cycle as well. And so, yeah, just to say that, as you know, won't be, you know, if things aren't, you know, if things have been really good and then they start changing, that's the natural evolution where groups kind of go in cycles. Has anyone got anything else to sort of share and ask questions about any of this stuff?
I just wanted to add that following on from potential conflict, clash of personalities, I think doing things socially as well for those that want to get involved, outside of just, you know, waving and chatting briefly at when you go over to your plot to do some work. It can help bond people as a kind of a community of plot holders. It's not for every site, it's not for everyone. Some people, certainly some people on my site, that wouldn't dream of going for a pint with anyone else, but all of our committee meetings are held across the road in an athletic club, which is like an old kind of British Legion type place. And we did organise, I didn't make it either actually, but we organised a couple of Christmas drinks at a different pub nearby to the allotments. And we find it mainly it's the younger people who have taken on plots more recently that are really thankful for being welcomed in like that, and find that they're becoming friends with people rather than, you know, just going and working in isolation, giving a quick wave and then off again. And we've had comments from a few people now that said, oh, everyone is so friendly and so welcoming, and it's really lovely over here. You walk in and there's a nice feel. And it's because we've got that kind of community element as well in there. We've got a communal shed, which we're hoping to put a shelter on, which will become a kind of gathering place as well. So people have got somewhere that's not their plot to go and sit and have a chat with other people.
Thanks, Lisa. Does anyone else want to share about,
Yeah.
Sarah?
So yeah, we're touch wood, relatively conflict free at our allotment site that I help run in Bangor at the moment. But I would say that, but I have been involved in plenty of community groups where things have gone a little bit wonky. And I would say if the more sort of well defined and clear your roles and responsibilities are, and the structure of the thing and everybody's expectations, the less room there is for conflict. So if there's any room for misunderstanding, then there will be some misunderstanding. So say with things like plot non-cultivation policies, you know, that's got to be super clear because people are going to get upset if you have to enter that process where you give them notice on their plot. So yeah, you have to have a super clear process for things like that. And also just echo what Lisa said, like our site was a new site, so we got to decide how things would be from the beginning, if you know what I mean. And we have a monthly work day, and you don't have to go to them all, but you do have to go to at least one or two a year. And really, that just really helps because everybody gets to know each other, and there's a few prickly characters that are kind of softened over like sharing cake, in between mowing the path. So I'd recommend that as well as an avoiding conflicts technique.
That's super helpful. Thank you, Sarah. Robin's asked in the chat, is there a conflict between dig and no dig? And I would say that this is certainly something that has come up in my allotment. And so, 50, 40 years ago, there was a kind of bit more of there was more a kind of, a lot, 40, 50 years ago, the way that allotments were managed were quite uniform. And with new sort of growing techniques, which are maybe more environmentally friendly, less invasive, and certainly, no dig when you're putting a mulch down and then putting compost and not doing so much kind of it looks different. There can be conflict, but I think that I haven't there has been issues on my allotment where people have been, I would say, a bit bitchy. I don't know if that's the right term, about certain approaches, but it hasn't resulted in a sort of a major fallout. Has anyone else got any experience with conflict between dig and no dig, Lisa?
We have got people who are very firm on that, who read Charles Dowding and watch videos and follow the no dig as much as possible. And in the past, he's been able to go out and get, tons and tons of compost, which is always the bit of the thing with no dig, is you've got to have the material there, really, you'll be able to get it there to do that. And then we've got the opposite end where somebody on a plot on the other side of the path puts petrol on his weeds to try and get rid of the mare's tail. And we try and we did try and comment on that before, and we all got shot down, and we got called a very funny name on the committee. We were called we were referred to as earwigs because he didn't like us interfering with the fact that he'd always put petrol on his weeds to kill them. So we let it go. Our tactic with that is, let's not get into a fight with this one plot holder. He's been there for 40 years. He's not going to change. We've just got to keep an eye on him. And then we've had things like people are a bit too relaxed and using it as a bit of an excuse, really. I'm an organic gardener, I don't dig, but then their plot is an absolute mess and it's covered with weeds. They're not growing anything on there. And the response to that was, I am growing something. I'm growing grass because I've got rabbits, and I'm growing grass to feed my rabbits. And that started off a whole conversation, is what do we define as using your plot to grow when we're looking at enforcing any rules about cultivation? Does cultivation mean you have to be growing something edible, or pollinators, plants, ornamentals, or can we include this guy's excuse for not doing anything in his plot in that he's growing grass for his rabbits? How do we? And that's still something we're trying to work our way through. So yeah, there's definitely, we haven't had anyone criticise another plot holder for using no dig methods as such, but we have had comments about people putting paths in, putting paving slabs down or putting some gravel down to be able to get around their plot easily. And a lot of people don't like the fact that that person is using a growing space, they're putting paths down when they should be growing vegetables in it. And it's kind of like, well, you've got to let people do what they like to some degree. You can't dictate how people lay their plots out and how they design them and how they want to access the various areas, as long as they're not putting any permanent features in or concreting anything in. And then there was the issue of, well, what happens if that person's edged a load of paths, and although it's not concreted in, what if the next person, they leave and the next person comes along and they've left all the gravel and the paving stones, which then have to be sorted out by the next person? And it's kind of like, well, where do you draw the line in telling people what they can and can't do? There's a bit of a kind of, you've got to get that balance. And I'm one of the people who've put paths in my plot, so because that's the way my mind works.
Nick's shared in the chat, for an insight into conflict and a good laugh, he's put a link watching your film Grow Your Own. So yeah, we'll share that with the Sarah's got her thumbs up for that one.
I don't know if everybody's seen it. It's probably 10 years old now, but it's quite a laugh.
Thank you for that, Nick.
A light-hearted look at allotments, among other things.
Great, thank you. Any more for any more? We don't have to. If we haven't got any more to share, we can very happy to finish 10 minutes early. That's no problem. I will just say that the National Allotment Society does also have a page on their website which is all about sort of legal structures, and so that's worth having a look at, and also our website as well, socialfarmsandgardens.org.uk. We've got a whole allotment toolkit which is available with lots of different chapters about all sorts of allotment matters. Lucy, do you want to share something?
Yeah, just to say, that you were asking about putting a link up for future sessions. I'd shared the Facebook page. I don't know if people know we've got a new website, and some pages haven't been transferred across yet. So it's in some ways looking a little bit sparse, but yeah, I mean, we would be interested to know if you'd like to perhaps hear from people like ANSAG, or maybe a local authority allotments officer that you know of that might be interesting to hear from. Or if you think that we should just be inviting other people along, then we'd be really interested to hear that. All right, I think Alison has uploaded something. I see. Yeah, there is a Google Docs form by the look of it, where you can share your ideas for future topics. So yeah, that's really important to us as an allotment forum. We want to know what people would find of use, and interesting speakers as well.
Great. Sorry, I doubled up on that. So there's twice in the chat feature there. But yeah, thank you for that, Lucy. Okay. Anyone else want to say anything, or should we go for lunch for those of us that haven't had it? Okay. I'm going to bid you all in the Douglas Showen then. Happy Christmas. Look out for our new look out in the new year for future allotment forum activities. As I said, we hope to have them once a quarter. Haven't made a date for next one. We'll also be thinking about what topic to host, and yeah, until then, wishing you all a very relaxing time. Nadolig llawen pawb. Okay. Hwyl fawr.
Bye. Thanks, Katie and Lisa. Nadolig llawen pawb.
Nadolig llawen.
Bye.
Dolig llawen.